All right, good evening. My name is Eddie Williams, and my business partner and I have been having these real estate investment meetings here for approximately almost 2 years. They're always free and always the third Tuesday of every month.
I have a real strong voice.
If you're watching via YouTube, we highly encourage you to come out to the live meeting, because needless to say, the more people that we get at the live meeting, the more people that can come out to share their different investment experiences with us. At the end, we're going to allow people to come up and make announcements that they like, real estate related announcements that they like. And it's going to go out via YouTube. We're averaging approximately 1,000 views per video, so it will go out to a lot more people. So keep that in mind. We're going to start off with something tonight, and we're going to start off by talking about a deal. So this is going to be a new feature every month, so hopefully we'll have different people coming up here sharing experiences about their deals. This is one that I did. It was one that came off of a sign, off of a bandit sign. I'm not a big believer in bandit signs because wholesaling is such a cutthroat business that they take your bandit signs. You put it up one day, go by the next, and hey, I didn't have a sign there, but it's gone. But I did get a call off of this particular bandit sign, and I went out, and it was a hoarder house. It had stuff from floor to ceiling in every room of the house, including in the basement. There was just a path through the house, including a path up the stairs. This house needed everything. That includes a roof, that includes windows, that includes a heater, that includes furnace, water heater, needed everything.
Well,
It was a lady who had lived there. She had died of cancer, and she had left it to her 4 brothers and sisters. And so I had to negotiate with all 4 parties. So it took a little bit longer than usual to get it tied up. But we did get it tied up. Got it tied up. It was in a neighborhood where the houses were going for a little bit over $100,000. We got it tied up for $16,000. I had my buyers come by and take a look at it. My buyers all said it was priced too high. One guy told me if I could get it down to $12,000, that he would gladly take it. But I knew they weren't going to go for that. They were adamant that they wanted 16. So I had to split the deal with another wholesaler. He had a buyer for it. His buyer came by, signed on the dotted line, and he and I split the wholesale fee. It wasn't a big wholesale fee. We had under contract at 16. We sold it at 20, and so we split the $4 grand. And you may be saying, well, $2 grand, so what? Yeah, but that was just that one deal. All right. And again, if I had a buyer, I would have got the whole $4 grand. But unfortunately, I did. So that stresses the importance of building your own buyers list. But also, just think about it. Could you use an extra $2 grand every month? That wouldn't hurt. And once you build your buyers list, on a deal, you get probably $5 grand. So anyway, that's just an example of one of the types of deals that you can find out there easily if you take action. As I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of bandit signs, but I love driving for dollars. If you take the time to drive for dollars on a page full of houses, and I guarantee you there's at least one deal on that page. All right, now, as I mentioned, every night, every third Tuesday, we have these meetings here. They're always free, and we always bring in a different speaker to cover a different aspect of investment real estate. If you've signed your name to our list there, we will email you out the video once it's up on YouTube within a couple of days. And again, at the end, we'll allow you to make your announcements because we're averaging about 1,000 views on YouTube. Tonight, we are extremely honored to have a gentleman I've had the pleasure of speaking a couple of times, at least 2 or 3 times. He speaks on a subject that in the 2 years that we've been doing these, I don't think we've had any uncovered. So it's an extremely niche market, but it's a very lucrative niche market, as you'll find out once he starts getting into the details of it. His name is Mr. Aydelottez. He spent 22 years in the engineering field, and after being burned out in the corporate world, Jim and his wife Kathy attended a real estate boot camp with the intent of leaving the business world and becoming financially free. Jim was excited about the prospect of real estate investing, but he knew nothing about it and did nothing for 3 to 4 years. And just an aside, I found that's pretty common about people who do real estate boot camps. But they did nothing for 3 to 4 years except study the materials he and his wife received. In May 2006, Jim answered the call to full-time ministry, leaving the engineering world and becoming a full-time pastor, prompting him to begin his real estate investment business on the side. Spending on average 5 to 10 hours per week, Jim has owned or controlled over $25 million in properties and real estate and over 280 transactions in 17 years. Jim accomplished this using none of his own money or credit, using lease options and creative financing strategies. Today is a full-time pastor and national speaker and coaches hundreds of people around the country on how to become financially free with the same strategies they still use today. With the passion to help others reach their goals through real estate investing, Jim provides a no-nonsense approach with real-world help by eliminating the fluff and hype that others bring with zero content. Today, Jim helps others invest with no money down and using no credit at all to control real estate from massive profits using creative financing. Please welcome Mr. Jim Aydelottez.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Is that better? Awesome. Awesome. It's great to be here. I have a ton of information to share with you. So one of the things that I will warn you about ahead of time is I do pack a lot of things into my presentations. Now, tonight is going to be an introduction to what I do. And I think you're going to find this incredibly helpful. Can you see the screen? Okay. So what we're going to cover tonight is a few things. We're going to talk about why options are so lucrative. And in particular, we're going to talk about lease options. We're going to talk about how to find sellers, how to find buyers. One of the things that I teach is how to put $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 in your bank account in 30 days. And I have students that do it faster than that. All right, so we're going to talk about how to put a reasonable amount of money in your bank account in a reasonable amount of time. And one of the ways that we do that, so I want to vet them very properly. So with that, I have a few questions. Where are you at right now? In other words, where do you see yourself positioned right now? Where do you see yourself in a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? And by the way, where do you want to be? My guess is you're here because you want to be someplace different, right? We agree with that? So you have to ask yourself, am I heading in the right direction? And there's metrics that we look at to do that. Now, if you remember what Eddie said, I was an engineer for 22 years. I'm a recovering engineer today. The reason why is I'm a data guy. So I make decisions based on the numbers and what they look like. I know I was hungry for change. Are you hungry for change? Do you want to be financially free? Yeah? You want to buy your time back? Are you willing to make changes in your life? Now you say yes, and the reason why I ask that is very, very important. Because about 38 million households today, they don't even have enough money to make any kind of emergency expenses. They have no savings, by and large, about 65%, which I'll show you. And 2/3 are earning a median income that is right around $41,000, which according to the government is above the poverty line. But the number of Americans who have no cash is staggering. It's absolutely staggering. 30% say they don't have savings, and another 36% on top of that. So we're talking about a full 2 out of 3 people don't even have any savings started for retirement, and most of them don't even have $1,000 in their account to cover an emergency expense. That's really kind of the reality. The other thing is that people are having a harder time savings because of inflation. Is anybody experiencing that? Yeah? I don't know, about 2 or 3 years ago, I started noticing this trend. They're putting more air in the bags of chips and less chips. And they're charging more. And by the way, this was August of 22, when inflation was beginning to ramp up, and it still is increasing. The increase has slowed down, except for this past month, the numbers were not good. And that's costing people an average of $1,717 a month more, or about $9,000 a year. That's staggering, folks. That's staggering. And maybe you want to invest in real estate. How many people here are active real estate investors right now? They've done deals currently. How many want to do deals? Okay, that's why you're here. But sometimes we think, I don't have the money to invest in real estate, right? And that's where I was. I was an engineer, I was a corporate engineer, but you know, quite frankly, I was still trying to make the money in the month match. And they didn't match a lot. And I was just tired of being just the leverage. I mean, just got to keep the thing going in order to keep life existence. You know, I found out my wife likes like running water and lights and heat, you know, so you got to pay for that stuff. And quite frankly, it's not something that you think about when you're in the middle of the rat race itself. You're not really cognizant of it. So, a little about me today. Been married 30 years, be 31 years this coming August. I've got 3 adult children, no grandkids. We have 3 dogs. We just got another puppy. So we're kind of dog parents right now. Pit bulls, which are the greatest dogs in the world. I'll argue with that with anybody. But anyway, and they're all rescues, so we like to rescue pups. I am a full-time pastor, as Eddie said. I've been pastoring full-time for going on 18 and a half years. When I left the engineering world after 22 years and I took the call to ministry, I can tell you this, that when you go from a corporate engineering position to pastoring a church of 25 people in the cornfields of Michigan, it's not a lateral move. So something had to change. And that's what prompted me to really start getting into understanding and learning real estate. And by the way, I started learning real estate investing, like Eddie said, right around 3 to 4 years before I did anything with it. We spent thousands of dollars, we went to a boot camp. I had all this information and I was trying to get the information in, but quite frankly, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no one to help me. I had no groups to plug into like this. I had no one to network with. So I kind of felt like an island unto myself. I am a part-time real estate investor. I spend typically between 3 to 6 hours a week in my real estate business. Part of that, not all of it, but part of it is helping my students. Just got off the phone today with a student. We've got a conference call tomorrow. This is their very first deal. And maybe I can just share the details of that with you real quick. It's a sub-2, which is not a lease option, but they're going to take over the payments, subject to the underlying mortgage. It's at a 2.99% interest rate. Monthly payments, all in, taxes, insurance, and everything, is right around $1,100. The house will rent or lease option between $1,600 and $1,800. The balance on the mortgage is $112,000. The house can be moved for $180,000. And all we're doing is signing a couple of documents to take control of the property. And then we'll be able to control the property. And then move it to a lease option tenant buyer. And so on their very first deal, they're going to make roughly $57,000. Will that change anybody's future? Yes? Okay. So that's one of the reasons why I also am a national speaker and a coach. And the reason why is because when I got started, I had no one to help me. And I always said to myself, and I love to teach, maybe that's why I'm a pastor as well, but I always said, if I ever get to the point where I'm teaching real estate, I'm going to help as many people as I can as well. Because that doesn't exist typically in this business without coughing up huge sums of money. So I literally, like tomorrow morning, that deal we're talking about, my student and myself, we're going to be on a 3-way call, a conference call with the seller, and I'm going to help close the deal for them. And the deal is over by Port Huron. I live 2 hours away. Okay? I have students in Seattle, Washington who are doing deals in Tennessee and they never leave their home. All right? So we're going to talk a little bit about how that works and what those kind of deals look like. Does that sound good? All right? With me? But for me, I wanted more free time. One of the things that was really important to me was my time. I don't know about you, but I'd rather make, let's say, $100,000 a year and do whatever I want when I want than $1 million a year and be tied to a business that owns me. You understand what I mean? So time is very, very, you can't get time back. You can get your funds back, you can create more income, right? I also like to, how many like to travel? I love to travel, okay? So one of the things that I noticed in the corporate world is that no matter where we went, my boss, my company, was responsible for telling me how long I could stay, what I could eat when I'm there, how we get there, when I have to come back, because I worked for them. And here's the thing, folks, I did not want a business that owned me. Prior to real estate, I was looking at a lot of things. I even looked at a Subway franchise. At the time, you got to realize you've got to put about, or you've got to get a loan for about $350,000 minimum before you even put mayonnaise on a piece of bread. Right? And then the return on investment is not that great. And you're the one there 6 or 7 days a week because you've got to make sure that it's managed properly. Unless you really have somebody that's able to do that. I wanted to be debt free. How many of you want to be debt free? That's huge. That's huge. When you don't have any payments on anything, I'm telling you, it changes your life. It changes your life. I like to spend time with my wife when we travel. Maybe you don't want to spend time with your family. Maybe you want to get away from your family. Right? I mean, you got the in-laws and you got the outlaws. You know what I mean? I like to wake up when I'm done. You ever do that? You're just laying in bed, you open your eyes and you go, wow, I must be done. I guess I'll get up. Because I don't have a box or an alarm on my phone screaming at me to get up in order to be someplace to make money for somebody else in a job that I don't like. I like to order from the left side of the menu. You know what I mean by that? Most people go to a restaurant when they pick up the menu and they look at the right side to see what the prices are. And they go, oh, I guess it's chicken again. I like to order from the left side. What am I hungry for? What sounds good? And not worry about the price because you don't have to put it on a credit card and pay it 30 days later. You understand? I like to fish. Any fishermen here? One? Oh, we're going to have to do some work on this one, Eddie. Love to fish. I like to hunt. In fact, 2 years ago, we bought a 25-acre plot of a private lake that no one can get to. It's spring-fed, and it's landlocked up north. And we just had, last year, an Amish cabin dropped on it. And it's self-sufficient. We have a solar system. We have electricity. This year we're clearing some deer trails and putting up some deer blinds that will be heated, because I hate the cold, so we can hunt. And do that whenever we want. I just want to live life more, folks. I knew there was more to life. You understand what I mean by that? I just wanted my life back. How many can identify with that? Can you identify with that? Seriously? Think about that. So, for me, when I started this business, I was living paycheck to paycheck. Just like everybody else. Everybody else who worked for somebody else, by and large, is living paycheck to paycheck. I was climbing the corporate ladder only to find out it was against the wrong wall. And I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was hungry for change. Something had to give. And I wanted a business, like I said, that didn't own me. And here's the thing, I did find out that what I can do with this business, I can do it from anywhere, at any time, in any market. And I can do that without a lot or a high level of education. Let me give it to you in a little bit different sense. When I started this business, I could build a house from the ground up. Electrical, plumbing, the whole bit. I do drywall. I was tin knocking for my uncle in his air conditioning and heating business when I was 16 years old. I knew nothing about real estate. You understand? That's a completely different language. Real estate is completely different. So I wanted to learn how I could get involved in real estate investing without having to go through high levels of understanding and expense so I could get in and do it. Okay? My wife and I, like I said, we love to travel. We're going back to Florida. We were in Florida in January. We're going back in April. We're going this time down to the Panhandle of Florida. We'll be on the beach in Destin, but we're looking for properties down there because we're going to probably buy something down there soon. And then we'll cash flow that and use it when we want. And then I can have a boat down there in the Gulf, and I can go to the marina, and I can hit the button, and the davits will lower the boat into the water, and we can grab the live bait, and we can head out to the Gulf and go fishing. And that's what you have to understand what you want. Because if you don't know what you want, you don't know why, you'll never get it. I mean, I'm telling you to the point, folks, please hear me when I say this, that I can, in my mind, in my imagination, I can walk out, I can feel the dew on the grass, I can smell the salt breeze, I hear the palm trees blowing, and I can smell the hot coffee in my thermos and in my hand, in my cup, and I can hear the engines roaring to life before we jump in the boat and we head out on the Gulf. That's the sense in which you have to have that concept of what I want and go after it. And here's why. I don't have this in my presentation, but I want to tell you why. You will never get what you want until you know what you want. And when you think about what you want and put the action behind it, no one will stop you. No one can stop you. Because you have the education, you have the information, and it's employing that and putting it into action that's going to what's going to motivate you. By the way, what's the gas in your gas tank? You have got to have a vision for your life. Not to preach, but the Bible says, without a vision, my people perish. You've got to understand what you're doing and where you're going. We like to travel, been to Alaska, I like to fish. I fish salmon derbies, I love Great Lakes, I like big water fishing. That happens to be a just over 40-pound king that we caught in Lake Ontario. It was during the fall derby. I didn't even get on the board with that. It was 2 pounds shy of the $20,000. But it took us an hour to get in a boat. Wonderful. And that's my daughter. Now this picture of her, she's 19. This is 10 years ago, she's 9. That was her first salmon. And there's a reason why I show you that picture. I show you that picture because that's on a Wednesday morning when no one else was at the fish cleaning station. The boat ramp was dry because there's no one there because they're all working. And we had Lake Michigan to ourselves. And when you can get up and say, what do I want to do tomorrow? It looks like it's going to be a nice day. It looks like we're going to have calm seas. Let's go salmon fishing. And just go. Well, she's a little older today. A couple years ago, we took almost 4 weeks, and we took a West Coast trip. And we drove. We stopped in Colorado. We went to Estes Park. We couldn't get into Rocky Mountain National Park because they had mudslides on the west side of the Continental Divide, so they had the interstate closed. So we just went another way, went to the north side of the Grand Canyon, which were there. By the way, that picture freaked my wife out. My wife is deathly afraid of heights. She's about 2 feet away from a mile drop. Well, then we ended up hitting the Southern California. We got on a 65-foot liveaboard boat for 5 days, and we went 200 miles off the coast of Mexico in the middle of the Pacific to a volcanic rock that sits about 10,000 feet out of the water. In fact, it's such a big island that it creates its own weather. And that's how close we were. And we went diving with great white sharks 15 to 20 feet for 5 days. Wouldn't that be fun? Now, this is me, and that's about a 16-foot, that's my fat face right there. And we're in a cage, there's 4 of us in a 12-foot wide cage. And this one got a little lost. Everyone else, the cage is 12 feet wide, 8 feet high, and 4 feet. There's 4 people. And that thing came at us, and everyone's freaking out, and I got the camera, I'm like, yeah, check it out, you know. So, but here's the thing, don't wait too long, you're not gonna make it. If you wanna do something, you gotta take action. But how many would and could just take 3 or 4 weeks off and go where you want? We had no schedule, except for that trip. That was the only trip we had planned, was at Guadalupe Island. Sad to say, Guadalupe Island, they shut down the shark boats. You can no longer go see the great whites, which was the pinnacle of great white shark diving in the world. So here's the truth. This is it. You can escape the rat race. You can invest with little or no money down. You don't need money or credit, and it's the best time to get started in real estate. Period. Hands down. Hands down. So what does it really take? Well, can you handle the truth? Yes? Come on, I can't hear you. Yes? This is not a secret. This is not a lesson in profundity. This is it. I don't care what you do. I don't care what vessel you use to get where you want to go. But I'm going to tell you right now, successful people take action. That's what Eddie mentioned earlier. But here's the thing. They don't just take action. They take massive, imperfect action, and they fail forward. I didn't know what I was doing. All I had was some educational materials. I went to a boot camp. I just said, all I said to myself is if half of what this guy is saying to me is true, I had better figure out how to do it because it's too good. And I did. But unfortunately with my engineering brain, it took me 3 or 4 years because I had detailitis. You know what detailitis is, right? You don't make a move because you don't know everything. And detailitis will kill you to be successful. Not only will detailitis kill you, it turns into another deadly form. It metastasizes into excuse-itis. And here's the thing, folks. Please hear me when I tell you this. If you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Period. Period. It's like when I went to engineering school. Got my engineering degree. I walk in the first day, first hour, the dean of the school steps up in front of 183 people in class, and he says, look to the person on your left and look to the person on the right, because they're not going to be here in 18 months. And I looked to my right and I looked to my left and I thought, it's not going to be me. Because I made a decision to do what it takes to get there. No different. No different. So your why has to be your driving motivator. What is your why? What's going to motivate you? You all said you like to travel, most of you. You all said you want to be debt-free. You all said you want to have the time to do whatever you want. But are you willing to put the action behind it? Yes? Yes? So what will it take for you to be uncomfortable for a while and do something poorly until you get good enough to do it well? And not only that, are you willing to do some things that other people aren't willing to do so you can have in the future what other people can't have? How many people can just take a month off and just travel and go see sights and not worry about when to come back? Would that be a fun trip? Wherever you want to go. Write this down if you're taking notes. Successful people take notes. And the reason why you take notes is Princeton actually did a study that said that people who write down concepts and ideas when they're listening to them actually retain about 85% of that, even a month out. Write this down. Please don't miss this. What I want you to write down is this. if time and money was no object, I would blank. You go home, you sleep on that question, and you ask yourself, what would I do if time and money was not an object? And you get up the next day and you start writing that down. But don't go to bed tonight without contemplating that question. The answers to that question, please hear me, friends, will change your life. It'll change your life. Plain and simple. So we're going to talk about creative finance. And here's the thing, the one-size approach doesn't work. Almost every deal is slightly different. And so you can't just run with the pack. You've got to be creative. You've got to think outside the box. What do you need? Why do you need creative financing tools in your toolbox? Because your market is changing. How many agree the market is changing? Yeah? How about building a portfolio? How about money for retirement? How about just being safe? How about inflation, deflation, stagflation? Big government overreach. How many people have an LLC here? Raise your hands. How many people who have an LLC has heard of the Corporate Transparency Act? Just a couple of people. I'm not here to preach on that, but you need to go home and listen about what that's about. If you have an LLC and you don't report it by the end of this year, federal courts are being challenged right now because it's unconstitutional. But if you don't report your LLC by the end of this year to the Criminal Bureau of the Treasury, you will face a minimum of $500 a day fine and up to 10 years in federal prison. Okay? I'll give you my card and stuff, and I can email you a contact just for free information. But don't do anything. If you have an LLC, wait to see what happens as the court plays that out. Sorry, that's just a little side thing I have to tell you about. If you don't know about it, be aware of it. Because most people aren't even aware of it. Is it fair? Maybe you can't qualify for a mortgage, but you want to buy a house. I have people who bought the course that I teach just to go out and take that information and get their own home. Pretty cool, right? Markets are changing. In fact, the economist who predicted the '08 housing crash predicts another 15% drop in home prices. This was February of last year. We are already seeing that in some markets. In Florida, we are seeing a massive, and I mean massive, price drops and more properties coming on board. We're seeing, just in the last few months, 10 to 15% price drops just in the last couple of months. Markets like Phoenix, Vegas, Boise, Idaho, they're all crashing. And the reason why those are crashing, and I teach my students this, I get into all the detail on this, but very briefly, the reason why is they're so overinflated. And being so overinflated, they've got a long way to drop. And I'm going to talk about that data in just a minute. These are mortgage applications for new purchases of single-family home sales. The blue is new and existing homes. The red are new purchase indexes. We're almost to where we were in the '08 crash. The gray bars are recessions. So, I mean, there's a couple of reasons why this is the case. Applications for refinancing are at probably about a 25-year low. Here we are today, we're going back to the dot-com crash of 2000. This is previously owned housing units, and we're seeing tremendous drops. Now you know what happened here. This is the cerveza sickness. This is when the bottom fell out in 2020 in March, 4 years ago this month. Almost 4 years ago to the day. But here's the problem, and this is what I want you to note. I want you to notice this. Every time we've seen a drop in the market, in the real estate market, which this blue line represents, you see housing has just taken off in the last 3 years. But income has not. The percentage of income it takes to buy a home is very, very difficult today. In fact, it costs the average buyer 80% more to buy a home today than it did 3 or 4 years ago. Let me put that in a little bit different perspective. I don't want to cloud you over with numbers, but this is really important. 4 years ago, interest rates were what? 3 and a quarter, right? Roughly. The median sales price for homes at that time was $265,000, plus or minus. Median income was for a household was pushing right around $71,000. That's dropped in the last 3 to 4 years. You could buy a median priced home at 3 or 3.25% at $265,000, and your principal and interest payment would be right around $1,320. Today, median sales prices, they were about $440, they're down to about $415. At 7%, you're paying $2,800 for P&I for a home. Problem, yes or yes? That's a huge problem. So something's got to give. Something has to give. So, but every time you see a drop in the market, in the real estate market with these red arrows, a recession takes place, and I believe that's where we're headed. I've been saying this for the last 2 years. Eddie probably has heard me say this before. This is where we're headed. And I have the data to back it up. Which means, if you are not equipped to start taking advantage of deals, you're going to get behind the curve. The next 3 to 5 years are going to make or break a lot of people. You with me? So please, don't miss that. Don't miss that. We're not seeing a typical supply and demand issue when it comes to housing. We're not seeing that at all. In fact, this scatter chart, it represents a pretty straight line of housing and supply and demand. As demand goes up, price goes up. As demand goes down, price goes down. But you see these dots out here? These dots, by the way, this right here are existing homes. These aren't new homes. Those dots represent what is taking place in the pricing, even just in the last couple of years. They're not even following the trend. So there's some really weird stuff going on in the market. Any real estate agents here? Licensed agents? One? Okay. I'm licensed as well, I just don't practice. You need to ask yourself, if prices are falling like this now, what's going to happen? What's the carnage going to be when inventory shoots up? What's going to happen when inventory goes through the roof? Prices are going to crash. People aren't going to be able to sell their homes. And what we offer is a solution to get them out of the properties so they can move on with their life. Don't miss that, folks. In fact, Eddie asked me before we started, he said, you live up north somewhere, right? I'm like an hour and 10 minutes away. I'm about 18 miles west and a little south of Flint. I live in Shiawassee County. 90% of all of my deals I have done in that county where there's less than 16,500 single family homes. You can't walk up the street without stumbling over 16,000 homes here. So there's no excuse. This works anywhere, and it works in any market. Here's the other shocker. Ready for this? The Fed's reset are seeing buyers canceling new home contracts spiking to 68%. Ready for this? 68 out of 100 people cancel their new home purchase and bail on the builder. What's going to happen? We're seeing right now in some markets, builders aren't even completing homes because they know they can't sell them. They're walking away from framed, sheeted, and maybe roofed homes that aren't even finished because they know that they can't pour money back into them and walk away and get them sold. That's happening in Texas. It's happening in Phoenix. It's happening in a lot of places. Things are changing. You agree? You understand? So I don't know where you think we are, right? I don't know. But People kind of last few years got into this optimistic euphoria feeling of, wow, I made a great investment, and look what I did. But as things are beginning to decline right now, they're starting to get either anxiety or maybe in denial. I think this is kind of where we're at right here. I don't know where you think we're at. I don't think we're down by desperation and panic yet, but we're headed in that direction. All the indicators show that that's the direction we're headed. And every market cycles like this. Every housing market cycles like this. So do you need creative financing in your real estate investment toolbox? I don't know. What are we talking about? Let's get into the nitty-gritty real quick, okay? Fair? And here's what we're going to do. Afterwards, I'm going to answer any questions you have, okay, for me. So write down your questions as we go through this a little bit more. What is creative financing? Number one, I am using option contracts that gives me the right to purchase the property, but not the obligation. I have the right to purchase the property, not the obligation. That's why it's an option. That's why it's an option. And I'm controlling properties without ownership. Sound good? Okay. The property I mentioned with the student who's going to do their first deal over by Port Huron, that's going to make $57,000, will not take title to that property at all. That will keep you up at night, I can tell. You're going to be thinking about that one. But we're going to talk about how that works briefly. So, there's other means, secondarily to what we're going to talk about. I'm not going to get into details, that give me either property rights and or ownership. I do lease purchases, land contracts, I do sub-twos. There's other means of control, even with or without ownership. Lease purchase would be the next level from a lease option to the next level of control. But we're not going to cover that tonight. But I help my students do any kind of deals. It doesn't have to be a lease option. It could be a fix and flip. I loan money to my students. We have people in our network that will loan money to our students. If they want a JV, most of my students, when they get started, oh, thank you. Can I save that for later? That's not mine. No, that's all right. I better not. So we do all kind of deals. I've done millions of dollars in fix and flips myself in Shiawassee County. So I've done it all. I'm in syndications right now. We have well into 6 figures invested in properties in multifamily units in Corpus Christi, Texas. We're evaluating one right now that's going to be, it's on the East Coast. It's in, it's in Port Huron. It's on the water in Port Huron. I just saw the portfolio yesterday. Where I'm not going to be involved, right? But we can put money into it and get a 15, 20, 25% return on our investment. And I don't have to do anything. I like that. Two main strategies I want to talk about tonight. One is referred to as what we call a sandwich lease option. These are where big paydays come. Big paydays come using this strategy. Sandwich lease option. The other is a cooperative option or a cooperative lease option. These are quick infusions of cash that you can make by wholesaling the paper to a tenant buyer. And I'm going to explain both of these, okay? So with sandwich lease options, we're talking about big money, okay? Big paydays. With cooperative lease options, we're talking about quick cash infusions into our bank account. This process right here, the second one, is the fastest, easiest, quickest way to make money in real estate, hands down. It beats wholesaling. Okay? And I want to talk a little bit about that. What does one of these look like? Cooperative lease option. This is a property. This is a custom-built home. This is in Lennon, Michigan. It's out, it had about 2 acres. Seller needed to get 190 roughly out of it. We moved it to a near qualified tenant buyer, and we marked up the price 3.5%, and I got a check for $6,650. I wasn't on title. I didn't have to wait for it to close. I took the documentation that I signed with the seller. They said we need this much money in this amount a month, this amount a month, And I took that and I marketed the property to a near qualified tenant buyer. I had them assign the assignment agreement, purchase and sale agreement, option agreement. They put an option fee down, and out of their $15,000, I walked away with $6,650. I didn't touch the house. I didn't show the house. I didn't leave my house. You like that? That's a cooperative lease option. This is, hands down, the easiest way to make quick money in real estate investing. The very first one I did a log cabin up on Lewiston Lake, which is about 3 hours north of here. I never saw it. I never saw the house. I spent 15 minutes of marketing. The very first one I did, we got a tenant buyer. And I think that first check on that was, I think I got $4,250 or something like that. Not a bad day. Right? I mean, Eddie was talking about a $2,000 deal. I'll do $2,000. I'll do $4,000. I'll do $10,000. As long as it's a win-win. You don't set it up anybody to fail, folks. You don't set up the seller to fail, and you don't set up the tenant buyer to fail. Right? You got to operate with integrity. So, let's look at one that's a little more complicated. This one will keep you up tonight, I guarantee you. This property is very, very typical. This is in Durand, Michigan. It's about 4 miles from where I live. About 1,300 square feet. At the time I picked it up, it was worth $78,000 and it was completely rehabbed. This property actually was the owner's own home. They rehabbed it and rented it, and after about 2 years they realized, I don't want to be a landlord. How many landlords are in here? Any landlords? All right, good. You don't have to be a landlord. It's like the poopiest thing that you can do. I have rentals as well, but anyway. By the way, does everybody know what ARV means? After repaired value. Okay, ARV. I picked it up for $67,000 and paid $650 a month. So I signed an agreement with the seller that said, I'm going to pay you $67,000 and $650 a month until I cash you out. Our term was 7 years at the time. I moved it for $82,900 and $850 a month. You say, well, that's not a very big deal, Jim. No, you're right. What's the profit look like? Well, I ended up getting 5 down payments because I had 5 tenant buyers move in and out in 5 years. The first tenant buyer moved in. He was a single guy. He moved in, and 4 months later, he was gone. I think he must have met a girl. That's all I could think of, because the place was just fixed. I mean, there wasn't anything wrong. I walk in, the keys are on the countertop, the garage door opens, the place is cleared out. Had my cleaning people go in, we marketed it, got another tenant buyer. That tenant buyer and the tenant buyer after them, they both were gone in less than a year because the men of the house liked their bottle more than they loved their wives. And then the fourth tenant buyer moved in, and in 12 months, she inherited a house across town from her aunt who passed away, so why wouldn't she take that for free? Got the house back, I moved it to a 5th tenant buyer, and they were the ones that were my end tenant buyer. So I ended up getting, in cash flow just on the monthly, about 18 grand over 6 years. I made $22,000 on upfront fees, plus the 18, so I made 40. Remember, I'm not on title. I control the property. I control the property with an instrument of paper. You with me? Then, can I ask a deep question? How many have a self-directed IRA? Okay, have you heard of self-directed IRAs? Okay. If you have a self-directed IRA or you can start one, do it as quickly as possible because the laws will be changing. Self-directed IRAs means anything you make in that IRA, including real estate investments, are tax-free for life. And you can will it to anybody if you pass away, and there's no taxes to them for life. So my self-directed IRA, SD IRA, ended up cashing out the buyer and renegotiated the terms for $61,875. Here's what happened. About 5 years go by, and the seller calls me up. His name is Dave, his wife's name was Bethany. Dave says, Jim, he says, I'm just wondering, can we get this deal done? Well, what do you need? I mean, we got a couple more years on contract. He said, I need like $15,000 because I want to buy a hunting property up north. I said, okay, let me think about it. I'll get back to you tomorrow. I might have a solution. I had that money sitting in my self-directed IRA. We renegotiated to where I paid $61,875. I put $15,000 down. I sold it for $90 in a year and a half, which means I made an additional $39,000 tax-free. There's no income tax, there's no capital gains tax, and when you take it out, there's no tax. So in all, in that deal, I made 40 and 39, I made $79,000 on a house that was worth, when I picked it up, $78,000. Hello, is this on?
Yeah.
How many like that? Like that? Thank you. That's what I teach you how to do. Okay? Let's look at another one real quick. This property, just in the county seat where I live in Shiawassee County. This deal I picked up for 70 grand. It was a rental, guy owned it, and he was renting it. I paid $775 a month, 0 down. Okay. I put it under contract for 7 years. I moved it for roughly $90,000 to $950 a month. I had 3 tenant buyers who each put 5 grand down, so I made $15,000 in upfront fees. Now, when a tenant buyer comes in, it's called an option fee. It's not a security deposit, folks. In fact, our agreement says a non-refundable option consideration fee. If you default, you lose that money. With me? Yeah? Can't hear you. You got it? So I had 3 tenant buyers. So I made $12,600 on the monthly spread over 6 years. I ultimately sold it. The last tenant buyer moved out. She met a guy. They got married, moved away. I sold it for $119. To questions afterwards. I can't take them right now, my friend. I owed $61,950 to the seller. I netted $44,000 and some change. Plus, because I was an agent, I listed it myself, so I double dipped, and I made another $37.50. So all in all, on that property, I made a little over 75 grand. Sound good? This is the secret sauce in creative financing deals. And it's not anything that is massively hard to understand. What's your name, man? What's your name, man? Oprah. Oprah has a house, okay? And Oprah can't, she either needs to sell quickly or she has no equity. Maybe she has no equity in the house. So Oprah says, yeah, I'd like to sell my house, I need to move. How much do you need, Oprah? I need $150,000. How much is it worth? Oprah says, probably about $175. Okay, so if I was to give you $150,000, would we have a deal? Oprah says, yeah. I say, how much is your payment a month? Oprah says it's $1,000, all in. Okay, if I find that house online, and if I look at that market, and I can rent that house for $500 a month, there's $500 a month cash flow, and I don't have to do anything. Oprah, we're going to agree on $150,000. I'm going to go ahead and make the $1,000 payment a month. Oh, by the way, Oprah, I'm going to take care of all the maintenance and repairs. You can move on with your life. You don't have to worry about it. We enter into agreement. That gives me the right to market the property. Eddie, you're a wholesaler? How many other wholesalers are in here, or people learning wholesaling? Anybody else? Okay. Have you done deals, sir? Okay, so all I'm doing is wholesaling my option agreement to a tenant buyer, but I only have it under contract for $150. I'm going to move it for, let's say, $180. I've just created $30,000 equity out of thin air. You with me? Not only that, but if I make $500 a month, every year I'm banking $6,000. If that deal went 2 years, that's 12 grand. 12 grand and $30,000 is what? $42,000 in profit in 24 months. I didn't rehab it. I didn't take title to it. You understand this? Is this hitting home? This is the power of what I'm talking to you about. So these are some examples. When we look at deals, we do some basic things. First of all, we don't work in war zones. I don't like working in war zones. I don't like to force any deals. It has to be a win-win-win. It has to be a win for Oprah. It has to be a win for the tenant buyer, and it has to be a win for me. Otherwise, I don't do it. Don't force any deals. Hey, listen, folks, your word is your worth. Your worth is your word. You understand that? I don't want to get emotionally tied to the deal. I have students that go, oh, but Jim, this couple is so nice. They need my help. Well, I get that, but they want $200,000 for a house that's worth $180,000. Yeah, but Jim, they're so nice. Okay, where's the profit? Can we help them? I can't help everybody. But I can talk to enough sellers who need to sell and talk with them and do deals. Let me ask you a question. What if you just did 2 deals a year that netted you $35,000? That's $70,000 for just doing 2 deals a year. Is that worth it? I don't know. It is to me. It is me. Okay? I mean, that would change some people's vacation schedules coming up. Probably would change Christmas this year. Okay? That's the power of what we're talking about. I don't burn any bridges because some of those sellers I follow up with, and I get those deals later because they didn't have success moving them at that time. So, and then here's the key. We always follow up, follow up, follow up. With any business, follow up is the key, folks. Follow up is the key. So, where do I find sellers like that? I mean, where could I begin to find sellers like that? Well, by and large, one of the things I have to tell you is if you're not using some kind of multi-touch, multi-type of contact, where your approach is where you're looking to contact motivated sellers and sort them out, and do that by contacting or having them contact you, I want you to know something. You are not going to succeed. You are behind the curve. If you think you can do this without even being relatable to somebody, like a seller, you're not going to succeed. So you can't use ringless voicemail. You can't just do postcards and yellow letters. I use those. But at some point, you've got to engage the seller, okay? And that's one of the things that I teach and I'll help you with. We call FSBOs, for sale by owners. Any Craigslist, Zillow leads. I have a whole metric that I teach of where to find these deals, what neighborhoods and zip codes to look at, and then we sort through and we start contacting them. And it's a very, very simple process. Okay? Very simple process. But the number one thing that will stop you is fear. Fear. And the reason why is because most people, like I was afraid to take action because I didn't think I knew everything. And I still don't know everything. Remember what I said. What are the 2 things successful people do? Number 1, they what? They what? They take notes, but they also take action. Ivy, right? Good answer, Ivy. The second thing they do, Ivy, what do? What kind of action? Massive imperfect action. You will not know everything as you fail forward. Understand? I mean, everything I know, I learned from someone else. You're not going to know everything, and so you don't sit in your driveway and say, all right, kids, we're going to Disneyland. Well, when are we leaving? Well, we're leaving when all the traffic lights turn green. You can't do that. You can't do that. So, in finding and locating deals, actively talking to people, engaging in genuine dialogue, And if you're not willing to do that, you're behind the curve. Can I ask you all a question? And maybe Eddie, you can help me with this. Would you guys like my personal phone script for contacting sellers for free if I gave it to you? Okay, so if I email to Eddie, can he get it to everybody? And even on YouTube, we can get them a link to get that as well. Okay, so I want you I have a simple script for you to talk to sellers. Okay? And I want to give that to you. Fair? Yeah? So, key steps is we have to at least gauge their interest. We have to build some rapport.